The Shadow Fleet arrives, Captain. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the research station Prometheus, watching the crimson sunset paint the toxic clouds of Kepler 4042c in shades of blood and gold. Her weathered hands traced the radiation, scars along her neck, badges of survival from 25 years living in Earth's poisoned wastelands. The air recycler hummed softly behind her, filtering out the deadly spores that made this world uninhabitable to most species in the galaxy. Sarah had volunteered for this assignment precisely because others couldn't survive here. The Deathworld. Coalition needed someone who could thrive where others would perish, and humans from the toxic zones were perfectly suited for the job. Her enhanced lungs could process the contaminated atmosphere, and her modified liver could neutralize toxins that would kill a baseline human in minutes. The communication panel buzzed with an urgent tone that made Sarah's combat-trained reflexes kick in immediately. She moved to the console with the fluid grace of someone who had learned to react quickly to survive. Station Prometheus. This is Commander Zara Volkov, aboard the mining vessel Red October. We have an emergency situation developing in the Outer Rim sectors. Zara's voice carried the distinctive accent of the Siberian radiation survivors, people who had adapted to live in the fallout zones after the old nuclear disasters. Sarah activated. The holographic display and Zara's scarred face appeared before her. The Russian woman's eyes held the same hardened look that all Deathworld survivors shared, the quiet confidence of those who had stared death in the face and lived to tell about it. "Report, Commander Volkov," Sarah said, her own voice carrying the authority of someone who had led evacuation missions through toxic storms and chemical rain. 3 systems have gone dark in the last 6 hours. Altair 7, New Geneva, and the Proxima research colonies. No distress signals, no warning transmissions. They just stopped responding. Zara's expression grew grimmer. My ship was returning from the asteroid belt when we detected something massive moving through hyperspace. Ships unlike anything in our databases. Sarah felt a familiar chill run down her spine. The same feeling she'd had during the great toxic storms on Earth when the air itself became poison. How massive are we talking? Each vessel appears to be at least 5 kilometers in length. They're completely black, absorbing all electromagnetic radiation. Our sensors can barely detect them, and only when they're moving. Zara paused, checking her readings. Sarah, there are dozens of them, maybe hundreds. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. The Deathworld Coalition had always prided itself on being prepared for any threat. Humans, Cathera from the high-gravity worlds, Zephyrians from the ice planets, and dozens of other species who had learned to survive in hostile environments. They had faced pirates, rogue AI, and even hostile aliens before. But this sounded different. "I'm calling an emergency assembly," Sarah decided. "How long until you can reach Prometheus Station?" 4 hours at maximum burn. "But Sarah, there's something else." Zara's voice dropped to a whisper. "The energy signatures these ships are giving off, they're not like anything we've seen. They're emitting some kind of field that disrupts electronic systems. My ship's AI keeps glitching whenever we get too close to their hyperspace wakes." After the transmission ended, Sarah immediately began sending out coded messages to every Deathworld settlement within 50 light-years. The response was swift and decisive. Within 6 hours, representatives from 12 different species had gathered at Prometheus Station, their ships forming a defensive perimeter around the research facility. Dr. Kai Nakamura arrived first, his submarine-like vessel rising from the methane seas of Titan like a metallic whale. The Japanese scientist had spent his entire life in the underwater colonies, developing gills and enhanced pressure tolerance that allowed him to work in environments that would crush normal humans. His pale, almost translucent skin bore the distinctive markings of deep-sea adaptation. "Sarah-san," Kai said as he boarded the station, his voice carrying the calm precision of someone accustomed to working under extreme pressure. "I've analyzed the electromagnetic disturbances," Zara reported. "The pattern suggests technology that operates on quantum principles we don't fully understand." General Thane Korex arrived next, his massive transport ship bristling with weapons forged on worlds where gravity was 3 times Earth normal. The Cathara warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, his thick bones and corded muscles making him look like a living statue carved from granite. His people had evolved on a world where predators hunted in packs and the very ground could collapse without warning. Human Sarah. Thane rumbled in his deep voice, using the formal address his people, reserved for respected allies. My scouts report similar disturbances near the Vegan colonies. Whatever these ships are, they're not randomly attacking. They're following a pattern. The briefing room filled with the representatives of dozens species, each adapted to survive. In conditions that would be instantly fatal to most life forms. There were the crystal-born from the silicon worlds, their translucent bodies refracting light in rainbow patterns. The Voidwalkers had arrived from the cold depths of interstellar space, their bioluminescent patches glowing softly in the dim light. Each species brought their own unique perspective on survival and adaptation. Sarah activated the central holographic display, showing the galaxy with red markers indicating the attacked systems. Based on the reports we've gathered, these shadow ships are targeting systems with specific characteristics. All the attacked colonies were in regions with high concentrations of exotic matter or unique energy signatures. Dr. Nakamura stepped forward, his analytical mind already working on the problem. If they're seeking exotic matter, they might be harvesting resources for some kind of large-scale construction project. The energy requirements for ships of that size would be enormous. Or they're looking for something specific, suggested Commander Elena Vasquez, a woman whose enhanced cardiovascular system allowed her to survive in the low-oxygen environments of the outer colonies. My people have legends about ancient races that traveled between galaxies, searching for something they called the Nexus Points. Before anyone could respond, the station's alert klaxons began wailing. Sarah rushed to the command center, followed by the assembled representatives. The main screen showed a sight that made even these hardened survivors pause in shock. A massive shadow ship had emerged from hyperspace just beyond the system's outer planets. The vessel was so large it blocked out the stars behind it, a moving void in space that seemed to devour light itself. Its hull was perfectly smooth, without any visible weapons or communication arrays, yet it radiated a sense of ancient malevolence that made everyone in the room instinctively step back. All stations, red alert, Sarah commanded. Zara, get your people to minimum safe distance. Kai, I need you to analyze every sensor reading we can get. Thane, prepare your ships for combat, but do not engage unless fired upon. The shadow ship hung motionless in space for several minutes as if studying the small collection of Deathworld vessels. Then, without warning, it began to move. Not with the mechanical precision of normal spacecraft, but with a fluid, organic motion that suggested something alive controlling it from within. Captain, reported the sensor operator, a young woman from the Arctic colonies whose enhanced vision could see in near total darkness. The ship is scanning us, but it's not using any kind of energy beam we can detect. It's like it's looking at us directly. Sarah felt her survival instincts screaming warnings. Every nerve in her toxin-adapted body was telling her to run, to hide, to get as far away from this thing as possible. But she was the commander, and these people were counting on her. Broadcast on all frequencies, she ordered. Standard first contact protocols. Mathematical sequences, universal constants, peaceful intentions. They transmitted for 10 minutes with no response. The shadow ship continued its slow approach, and with each passing moment, the electronic systems throughout the station began experiencing more severe malfunctions. Lights flickered, artificial gravity wavered, and the life support system started producing error messages in languages that didn't exist. Then the shadow ship opened fire. The weapon wasn't like anything they had ever seen. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, the ship released what appeared to be tears in space itself. Dark rifts opened in the void, and where they touched matter, that matter simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but erased from reality as if it had never been there at all. One of the smaller Kethra ships was caught in the edge of a rift. The vessel didn't explode or break apart. It simply wasn't there anymore, leaving behind only empty space and the horrified screams of its crew over the radio before they too were cut off. All ships, emergency jump, Sarah shouted. Get us out of here now. The assembled fleet scattered, their ships disappearing into hyperspace in all directions. Sarah's own vessel, the converted research ship Defiance, was the last to jump. As they entered the hyperspace tunnel, she caught one final glimpse of the shadow ship through the rear sensors. It wasn't pursuing them. Instead, it had turned toward the inner system, toward the inhabited worlds that couldn't defend themselves. And in that moment, Sarah understood that this wasn't just an attack. It was the beginning of an invasion that could consume the entire galaxy. The Defiance emerged from hyperspace at the emergency rendezvous point, a barren system that served as a rally point for the Deathworld Coalition. One by one, the other ships appeared, their crews shaken but alive. But they had lost more than just one vessel. They had lost their sense of invulnerability, the confidence that came from being the survivors of the galaxy's most hostile worlds. Status. Report, Sarah called out as the commanders gathered in the Defiance's briefing room via holographic conference. We've lost contact with 17 more systems, reported Zara, her voice tight with controlled fear. The shadow ships are spreading out across the galaxy. They're not just attacking randomly anymore, they're coordinating their movements. Dr. Nakamura's pale face was grim as he presented his analysis. The energy readings from that weapon are unlike anything in our databases. It appears to operate by creating localized tears in the fabric of space-time itself. The implications are terrifying. If they can weaponize spatial distortions on that scale, conventional defenses are useless. General Thane's massive form dominated his section of the holographic display. My people have faced extinction before. We know how to fight impossible odds. But this enemy, they do not seem to follow the rules of warfare we understand. How do you fight something that can erase you from existence? Sarah looked around at the assembled leaders, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. These were people who had been forged by the harshest environments in the galaxy. They had survived toxic storms, crushing gravity, freezing, void, and radiation that would kill most life forms instantly. They had learned to adapt, to improvise, to find ways to live where others would die. We do what we've always done, Sarah said, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of a true survivor. We adapt, we learn. We find a way to survive what others can't. But first we need to understand what we're really facing. Commander Vasquez raised her hand. My people have archives that go back thousands of years. Ancient stories about Shadow, fleets that appeared in the distant past. If these are the same entities, there might be records of how they were defeated before. And if they were never defeated? Asked Kai. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Then we'll be the first to find a way. That's what Deathworld survivors do. We don't give up, and we don't surrender. But we're going to need help. More help than just, our coalition can provide. The room fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. For the first time in their history, the proud survivors of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds were going to have to ask for help from the very civilizations they had always protected. But as Sarah looked out at the stars, she felt a familiar determination settling over her like an old, comfortable coat. The Shadow Fleet might be ancient and powerful, but they had never faced anything like the Deathworld Alliance. And if humanity had learned anything from surviving on a poisoned Earth, it was that sometimes the most toxic environments produced the strongest survivors. The war for the galaxy's survival was about to begin, and the children of hostile worlds would not go quietly into the dark. The Ancient Warning. 3 days after the first shadow ship encounter, Sarah Chen found herself in a place she had never expected to visit, the crystal sanctum of Zerion Prime. The ancient temple complex floated in the upper atmosphere of a gas giant, held aloft by technology that predated human civilization by millions of years. The air here was thin but breathable, artificially maintained by the same mysterious forces that kept the entire structure from plummeting into the planet's crushing depths. Sarah's radiation-scarred skin tingled as she walked through corridors, lined with crystalline formations that pulsed with their own inner light. Beside her, Dr. Kai Nakamura moved with the careful, measured steps of someone accustomed to navigating underwater environments, while General Thane Korex's massive frame caused the ancient floor to vibrate with each step. They had come here, following a cryptic message received after their emergency broadcast to every known civilization in the galaxy. The response had come from the Ethereal Council, one of the oldest surviving races in the known universe. Their message had been simple but urgent. The Shadow Fleet has returned. Come to Zerion Prime. Bring your finest warriors and your deepest thinkers. The galaxy's survival depends on what we must share with you. Elder Vexhai awaited them in the central chamber, a vast spherical room where gravity seemed to flow in impossible directions. The ethereal was ancient beyond human comprehension, her translucent form shifting between states of matter like a living aurora. When she spoke, her voice resonated directly in their minds rather than through their ears. Children of the harsh worlds, Vexhai's mental voice carried tones of both sadness and hope. You have encountered the Devourers of Light, though you call them the Shadow Fleet. We have been waiting for this day for 3 million years. Sarah stepped forward, her commander's instincts overriding her awe at being in the presence of such an ancient being. You know what these ships are? You fought them before? Not fought, Vexhai corrected, her form shimmering with what might have been regret. Fled, hidden, waited. The Devourers are not merely an enemy to be defeated. They are a force of cosmic entropy, beings who have transcended their physical forms to become something far more dangerous. The chamber around them began to change, the crystal walls displaying holographic images of a galaxy in its prime. Billions of stars supported thriving civilizations. Trade routes connected distant worlds, and art and science flourished across countless species. This was our galaxy once, Vexhai continued, before the Devourers came. They were not always what they are now. Long ago, they were a species much like yours, driven by curiosity and the desire to explore. But they made a choice that doomed them and nearly destroyed everything else. The images shifted, showing a single star system where massive ring-like structures surrounded a dying sun. They discovered how to harvest the quantum foam that underlies reality itself, converting it into pure energy. At first, it seemed like the perfect solution to their civilization's energy needs. But quantum foam is not merely energy. It is the foundation upon which physical reality is built. Dr. Nakamura leaned forward, his scientific mind grasping the implications immediately. They're unraveling the universe itself to power their technology. Precisely. With each world they consume, each star they drain, they grow stronger while reality itself grows weaker. The weapons you witnessed, the ability to erase matter from existence, these are side effects of their conversion process. They are turning the galaxy into fuel for their continued expansion. General Thane's deep voice rumbled through the chamber. You said you fled from them. How did your people survive? Vexhai's form flickered, and for a moment Sarah could see the weight of eons of guilt and sorrow pressing down on the ancient being. We discovered something they could not understand or predict, the power of biological consciousness merged with quantum technology. Your species, children of hostile worlds, possess something that makes this fusion possible in ways we never imagined. The chamber's walls now displayed images of the Deathworld Coalition's various species, their genetic patterns and evolutionary adaptations highlighted in brilliant colors. Life that has survived extreme conditions develops neural pathways and genetic expressions that allow for unprecedented plasticity. Your minds can adapt to states of consciousness that would destroy most other beings. This is why the Devourers cannot simply consume you as they have others. Sarah felt a chill of understanding. You're saying we're immune to their reality erasure weapons? Not immune, Vexhai corrected, but resistant. Your consciousness, tempered by survival against overwhelming odds, can maintain coherence even when exposed to quantum disruption fields. More importantly, when merged with certain technologies we have preserved, you can become something the Devourers have never encountered, a force that grows stronger through adversity rather than weaker. The ancient ethereal gestured, and a section of the chamber's floor began to rise, revealing a crystalline structure unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. The crystal pulsed with an inner light that seemed to respond to her heartbeat, growing brighter as she approached. These are Nexus crystals, Vexhai explained. We have hidden them throughout the galaxy, waiting for beings capable of using them. When properly attuned to a Deathworld survivor's consciousness, they can channel quantum energy in ways that disrupt the Devourer's reality harvesting technology. Kai stepped closer to examine the crystal, his scientific training warring with an instinctive fear of the artifact's obvious power. What exactly do these crystals do? They create zones of quantum stability, pockets of space-time that resist the Devourer's reality-altering effects. A ship equipped with properly attuned Nexus crystals can not only survive the Shadow Fleet's weapons, but can actively heal the damage they inflict on reality itself. Sarah reached out tentatively toward the crystal, stopping just short of touching its surface. She could feel something emanating from it, a sensation like standing at the edge of a toxic storm, but knowing you had the equipment to survive it. How many of these crystals exist, she asked. 17 were hidden in various locations throughout the galaxy. Each one requires a different type of consciousness to properly attune. The crystal before you responds to those who have survived toxic environments. Others are keyed to beings who have adapted to crushing gravity, extreme cold, radiation exposure, or other hostile conditions. General Thane stepped forward, his massive form casting strange shadows in the crystal's pulsing light. This sounds like a weapon, but you said you fled from the Devourers. Why didn't your people use these crystals to fight them? Vex High's form dimmed, becoming almost transparent. Because we were not strong enough. Our consciousness, ancient and refined though it was, had grown too comfortable, too removed from the raw struggle of survival. We could not maintain the connection to the crystals under the stress of actual combat. That is why we waited. We needed beings who had been forged by adversity, who could channel the crystal's power even while facing annihilation. Sarah finally touched the crystal, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. Her consciousness expanded beyond her physical form, suddenly aware of quantum fluctuations throughout the entire star system. She could feel the reality distortions left by the Shadow Fleet's passage, like wounds in the fabric of space-time itself. But, more than that, she could sense how to heal those wounds. The knowledge flowed into her mind like water into a sponge, and she understood with perfect clarity how the Nexus crystals could be used to create ships that were more than mere vessels. They would become extensions of their pilot's consciousness, able to adapt and respond to threats in ways that no conventional technology could match. I can feel it, Sarah whispered, her voice filled with wonder and determination. I can see how to make this work, but we'll need all 17 crystals and crews from every major Deathworld species to pilot the ships. The locations of the crystals are hidden in the archives of each major Deathworld colony, Vex High revealed. Your own leaders have carried the knowledge for generations, encoded in stories and legends that seemed like mere folklore. Now you must gather them all and learn to use them before the Shadow Fleet completes its current harvesting cycle. Kai looked up from his examination of the crystal's quantum resonance patterns. How long do we have? Based on their current rate of consumption, perhaps 6 months before they have enough energy to begin their final phase. The conversion of entire star systems into pure quantum fuel. Once that process begins, reality itself will start to unravel in an expanding wave that will eventually consume everything. The weight of that revelation settled over the 3 Deathworld representatives like a physical pressure. Sarah felt the familiar sensation of facing impossible odds, the same feeling she'd had during the worst toxic storms on Earth. But alongside the fear came something else. The cold, calculating determination of a survivor who refused to give up. We'll need more than just the crystals, Sarah said, her mind already working through the tactical implications. We'll need to convince every Deathworld colony to work together, and we'll need ships that can be modified to accept the crystal. Technology. The ship designs are contained within each crystal, Vex High assured them. When properly attuned, the crystals will provide the blueprints for vessels that blur the line between technology and consciousness. But be warned, the process of attuning to a crystal is dangerous. Not everyone who attempts it survives. General Thane's laugh was grimly amused. Dangerous. Elder, we are people who were born in danger. Our entire existence has been about surviving, what others cannot. If there's a chance to save the galaxy, we'll take it regardless of the risk. As they prepared to leave the crystal sanctum, Vexhai shared one final piece of information that would change everything they thought they knew about the coming war. There is something else you must understand about the Devourers. They were not the only species to discover quantum harvesting technology. Throughout cosmic history, several civilizations have made the same choice, and all of them eventually became part of the same collective consciousness. The Shadow Fleet you have encountered is not a single enemy, but a merger of dozens of fallen civilizations, all consumed by their own hunger for power. Sarah paused at the chamber's entrance. You're saying that if we fail, humanity and our allies will become part of that fleet? Worse, Vexhai replied. If you fail, you will become the most dangerous part of that fleet. Your adaptability, your refusal to surrender, your ability to survive impossible conditions, all of that will be turned toward the goal of consuming reality itself. The very traits that make you capable of stopping the Devourers will make you the most effective servants of entropy the universe has ever seen. The three representatives left the crystal sanctum with a burden heavier than any they had ever carried. They were not just fighting for the survival of their species, or even their galaxy. They were fighting to prevent their own strength from being turned into the ultimate weapon of destruction. As their ship departed Zerion Prime, Sarah looked back at the ancient temple floating in the gas giant's atmosphere. Elder Vexhai's final words echoed in her mind. The choice that destroyed the Devourer's original civilization was the same choice that saved ours. The difference was not in the technology, but in the consciousness that wielded it. The hunt for the 17 Nexus crystals was about to begin, and with it, the most desperate gamble in galactic history. The Deathworld Alliance would either save the universe or become its greatest threat. There would be no middle ground, no partial victory, no second chances. But as Sarah felt the quantum resonance of the crystal they had retrieved pulsing in harmony with her heartbeat, she knew that they would face whatever came with the same stubborn determination that had allowed them to survive on worlds that should have killed them. The Shadow Fleet had made one critical mistake. They had given the galaxy's survivors a reason to unite. And there was nothing more dangerous than a cornered predator with nothing left to lose.